John Eustace faces some huge Derby County squad calls over the course of the next couple of weeks before the transfer window slams shut and Derby County's squad is set in stone up until the January window. Now, those of you who don't know, Derby County are edging closer to the signing of Koki Sayoto, who can play on that left-hand side. He can also play on the right and through the middle. There's also rumours suggesting that Lewis Travis is edging closer to a move as well, and also rumours suggesting that Max Johnston needs a deal with £2 million being put on offer to Sturm Graz, and that will be an extra addition to the squad. Now, obviously, for Derby County and for John Eustace, they've got to stay within the EFL rules and guidelines, and that means that they can only have 25 over 21 years of age players registered to the squad, and at the moment they're very close to being in breach of that rule and having to deregister one of their players. Now, it is going to be interesting to see what Derby County do in regards to that squad registration, but we're going to get into that in this video. Now, if you have not done so already, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell. I'm going to try and go live later on this evening to discuss Derby County, Koki Sayoto, Lewis Travis, and Max Johnston. There's obviously a lot going on with Derby County at the moment, so if you haven't done so already, hit like and hit subscribe to make sure you stay tuned. Now, obviously, for Derby County, there is a lot of work to do. The first 3 games of the season certainly haven't gone anywhere near as planned, and for me, I think Derby County haven't necessarily been as good as we probably anticipated they would be. Now, it was always going to be a patient waiting game as Derby County fans this season, because we obviously knew that a lot of our key players are currently out injured and won't be back fit until that first international break. But we also knew that there was a lot of quality joining the squad, and if you add that to the quality that we already had, I think it put us in a good position. Now, the big problem that we are currently facing is that a lot of that quality isn't yet available, and it's making it really difficult for Derby County as they sort of move through the early phases of the season. Up against Stoke, we brought in Dion Sanderson off the bench, who in my opinion is nowhere near the quality of that of Sondre Langas or even that of Danny Bath, and ultimately it cost Derby County at minimum a point. You then go into the game versus West Bromwich Albion, which was a fairly okay game, but it was a last-minute screamer from Joe Ward, which gave us the point. Well, he didn't give us the point, it gave us the opportunity to go to pens and then go through to the next round. Obviously, we did that live on stream. And then obviously at the weekend, we held 5 at home to Coventry City, and it was a bit of a defensive shambles. First goal, you put on Zetterstrom. The other few, you put on the likes of Sanderson, the likes of Danny Bart. I think for one of the goals, both fullbacks were at fault, but we can discuss that later on. And this is where you sort of open up that conversation of who's going to be disregistered and who is going to move on for Derby County. Because if we do bring in the 3 of Sayoto, Travis and Johnston, then we are going to be over our numbers. I think we're going to be on 27 outfield players that are going to be over the age of 21. And that is obviously, that's not good. That isn't good for Derby, because you don't want players who aren't registered and are training but can't play, because ultimately that sort of brings the whole vibe of the squad down, and you don't necessarily want to have to deal with that, in my personal opinion. Now, obviously everyone will have their own opinions and things like that, but for me, if you max out your squad, fair enough, but we're going to have to let people go at some point. Now, who are those players going to be? Now, obviously, Blackett-Taylor's out until the first international break. Owen Beck's out till the first international break as well. So they will be registered, but they won't be playing. You've then got, in that sort of centre-back positions, is Curtis Nelson going to play a part under John Eustace? If you look at the players that we've got, Clark, Langas, Bart, Sanderson, is he part of the plans? I don't really know. You then look at the right back position. If Derby County bring in Johnston, does Niambi still have a future at the club? Does Kane Wilson still have a future at the club? And we'll go into Joe Ward a little bit later on. You look at left back, you've got Elder, Beck, Forsyth. I do think there's a world where Craig Forsyth isn't registered in January, but I think he'll be registered for the first half of the season. And there's also a conversation about him potentially sort of moving away into sort of a backroom staff role towards next season anyway. So it will be interesting to see how that's sort of handled over the course of the next few weeks. You then go into midfield where you've got Ozo, Thompson, Adams, Kenzo and Osborne, who all have to be registered. You've then got the rumoured signing of Lewis Travis, which is apparently edging closer, but ultimately we do not have any confirmation on that as of yet. And that would then put us at 6 midfielders. Well, it would put us at 6, yeah, of those central midfielders, which if you then go and add in Bobby Clark, who can play central, if you add in Brewster, who can play in that number 10 role as well, I don't necessarily think we need 6 in that position. You also look at some of the players coming through the academy, your Cruz Allens, your Harry Hawkins, your Niall McAndrews, your Owen Eames, and you're sort of just taking up roles for the sake of taking up roles, in my opinion. So another one who I think could be unregistered is Ben Osborne. Now we go into the forward area where I'm actually in a position where I don't think any of them can be unregistered or should be, to be quite honest with you. Obviously on the right, we've got Jackson and Brewster. Through the middle, you've got Clark and Vyman. On the left, Blackett, Taylor and potentially Sayoto, who is rumoured to be coming in from Lamel across the course of these next few days. But ultimately, no deal has been concluded as of time of recording. You've also then got Joe Ward. Now, for me, I'm at a position where I'd potentially start Joe Ward. As a Derby County fan looking at the game, I'm not saying it's the right call. I'm not saying that it should happen. But ultimately, I think there's a world where Joe Ward starts on the right, Caden Jackson starts on the left, while we're awaiting Bobby Clark to hit his fitness levels, which obviously we don't know how long that's going to take. And for me, I just think that as much as we've got quality around the pitch, none of it is available right now. And the big question that has to keep on going for me in that sort of squad discussion is, where does Curtis Nelson fit? Where does Ben Osborne fit? And where does Joe Ward fit? I know Joe Ward has played in the last couple of games, obviously versus West Brom. He got 90, came off the bench versus Coventry City to play in that sort of right wing position, then moved to right back when Dejan Brown came on. And I do think Joe Ward has a role to play. I do think he can have an impact this season, but do we really need him? I think, to be honest with you, I think the answer is probably no. But I do like Joe Ward. I do think he's got quality. I think he's got probably the best delivery of a ball, in my personal opinion, in that sort of circumstance. And I think that's a brilliant option to have when you've got the likes of Morris, Salverson, Adjumang. You've also got Dejan Brown who can play through the middle as well. There's so many different conversations that you can have about that sort of right-hand side position and who can play there. And obviously on the left-hand side at the moment, you've only got Blackett Taylor. Unless we know we're awaiting confirmation of Sayoto being confirmed as a Derby County player. We obviously had a little bit of news on that yesterday. Was it yesterday? Saturday, sorry. So we're in a little bit of a difficult spot for me right now where we're going to have to unregister players if we do bring in. Even if we bring in 2 of them, we've got to deregister someone. Someone has to move on. And if I'm quite honest with you, I really don't know who that's going to be. I've been saying since probably January that it would be Joe Ward. Osborne would probably move on as well. But ultimately, I didn't anticipate us bringing back David Ozo. I didn't anticipate the signing of Bobby Clark. So we're in a very, very weird position right now where I think Derby County could start this season with an overloaded squad. Now, I know John Eustace has got this adamant nature at the moment of saying that we've let essentially 12 players go. But realistically, Washington was never registered. Ward was injured, so wasn't registered. Blackett Taylor wasn't registered last season. Towards the back end anyway. Dejan Brown, I think, doesn't have to be registered anyway, but he wasn't part of that. And you've obviously got Niambi, who got injured towards the back end of the season as well. Nelson was out of the registration. So we're in a position, really, where, yes, we let go of 12 players, but we also bought in 3 free agents in Kmar Roof, in Eric Peters and in Jeff Hendrick, who were then registered to be involved if needs be. So that's 3 of your 12. You then look at Blackett Taylor, who was deregistered, Ward, who was deregistered, and Nelson, who was deregistered due to their injuries. And you sort of go, yes, we've let 12 go, but those scaps were pretty much already taken within the squad. So it's one of those where it's essentially players that weren't involved anyway are the ones that have moved on, and that's what needs to be dealt with, is that we don't have that situation anymore where there's players that aren't going to play, really. In my opinion, everybody in this squad can play at this level and can have an impact. I just don't think they all should be at this level with us, if I'm completely honest. Now, obviously, we're going to have to wait and see what does happen with John Eustace and with this squad, and we'll obviously go through it as the transfer window goes off. I do intend on going live probably around 7 tonight to see everybody, see what's going off, what your thoughts and feelings are. Obviously discuss the likes of the Premier League, the Championship results, look at the league table and things like that, and potentially some transfer news that may come our way as well. Now, obviously, if you have not done so already, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell. But I'll let you go now, so let me know your thoughts down below.